Travis Wayne Goodsell. It's almost 1 a.m. Let's check the docket before I list off a whole page worth of church scandals under Nelson. Oh man. So I may remind you that the church has lost on 3 separate causes. So Judge Oberg is supposed to give the order for me for the victory. However, I had caught her favoring the church, but requested a final judgment based on that, among the other scandals involved in this case. She has not done anything. She is now taking her time for the first time. So yeah, she's purposely taking her time on giving a judgment on this one. She is not as hasty as she was last week, in denying everything of mine, not even touching the church, which I pointed out to her. She is now a magistrate judge. She is not a plant for the church to protect themselves. Alrighty, let's go over the list of scandals then that the church has recently been involved in. Oh man. Poisoning of the young women of the church at girls' camp. If you don't remember my covering of that video, yeah, Mormon girls are being poisoned by going to camp. Fortunately, coronavirus, I think, may have prevented girls' camp this year, but as of winter last year, it was still an issue. The most recent scandal was last night when I went over the video about black Mormons demanding that, they were being nice, or maybe ABC 4 News Utah was being nice in presenting it, but black Mormons are fed up with regular Mormons for their racism, demanded that there be education given to address the issue of racism in the church. But they got the priesthood back in 1978. There shouldn't be a problem anymore. The other big one, which went national, was the $100 billion in tithing scandal. And then the follow-up to that was Business Insider, which became Market Insider later, but it still kept the same UP, whatever the search engine address is. The $40 billion portfolio by Ensign Peak Associates, which I'm the one who exclusively covered the investments in Deutsche Bank. And if you don't know Deutsche Bank, and how that's a scandal in and of itself, as the international hub for money laundering, most often with Russia, but other criminal organizations utilize it as well. Man. Okay, and then the other lawsuit, Gaddy versus COP, really hit the church. And so that involves my lawsuit as a follow-up, because they had Judge First in the beginning. Judge First allowed Gaddy's case to proceed, and the church retaliated with termination of First's employment. The first time ever a magistrate judge was fired, and she was female. So it hit the news of Judge First's firing as I got assigned to her case, as she's been fired. And then her time came and went, and she did not give the final order. So now it's set up for the church to have Oberg dismiss my case, and I've now called her on it over this weekend, letting her know it's an act of treason if she sides with the church and dismisses my case. And so now she's taking a little time to think, rather than acting impulsively to dismiss everything I present. Alright, the LGBT versus the church, it's not a lawsuit, but the LGBT community is still having problems with the church. They keep issuing statements that insult and demean and degrade and belittle and LGBT. So the church is not very sensitive. Which, if you understand white supremacy, that's the word they use. Oh, you're just sensitive. So, turn it back on the church. Ordained women. Now, though they'd excommunicated the leader of ordained women long ago, there's still an ordained women organization. She's still, I think she's still the leader of it. It's just she's been excommunicated. But women's voices in the church are still demanding to be heard. And Nelson has made some changes with women's rights in the church. Women are now allowed to wear slacks. I mean, just that statement alone should tell you all you need to know that the church is corrupt. I mean, dear God, let the women wear slacks. Quit making it an issue. But, yeah. Nelson also changed the temple text of the endowment, and he's apparently fooled people. I'm the exclusive coverage on his true intentions, because women have thought, oh, okay, finally, Eve has a bigger speaking role, which the endowment is not a historical account of what happened, and you can't change history if it were a historical account. But God, I mean, who cares how much of a speaking role Eve has? Who cares? I mean, dear God. But I don't know, women thought that was a good thing, that Eve gets to speak more. She's not silent. I just, because despite this increased speaking role for women, despite being having the veil taken from women's faces, which is a bad thing, women. You think that because you're wearing the veil, you're like the Muslims, whose women have to have their faces covered up because of their beauty. And if you don't understand, that is why. Because Muslims understand women get men horny. So it's a hedge law for Muslims to keep Muslim men from violating the law of adultery, so that they cover up women as a result to protect the men. But I don't know if that understanding has remained to this day as the reasoning, but women have associated being covered up as women with oppression and suppression and depression and blah blah blah, and that may have become the practice in Islam, even though the original origin was to keep men from getting horny. I mean, it doesn't work, because as a Mormon, born and raised, Mormon women become attractive because that's my culture that I grew up in. And so it doesn't matter if you're completely covered in a tent. If that's the culture that men are born and raised in, that becomes the pinup picture for men. You just can't get away from it. So other than to completely isolate socially men and women and have arranged marriages, which may also be a part of that in the culture to some degree. But instead of creating hedge laws, why not just teach people about sex ed? It's that simple. But the veil is not to suppress you women. The veil actually glorifies you women. Because remember, when you go before the veil of the temple, who's behind the veil? Who's covered with the veil? That's right, God. And so women, that's why you wear the veil. Because you are compared to the glory of God. That's why you wear the veil in the temple. And Nelson took that away from you. He took away your glory by taking away the veil. And you thought that that was good, and that was giving women equal rights and blah blah blah. No, he's insulting you. The other thing was the law of obedience, that first law in the endowment session. He has taken, or let women assume that they no longer have to obey their husband. Remember how that was a scandal, and before 1991 the actual wording was obey. And then after 1991 it became hearken unto the counsel of your husband as he hearkens unto the counsel of the Father. And so women now believe that they don't have to obey their husbands. But like I said, Nelson insults you at the same time, where you no longer require the veil in the ceremony. Your glory has been stripped from you so that Eve can have a bigger speaking role, and that you no longer have to obey your husband. However, there's another added punishment in the temple that Nelson rearranged. That is with the law of chastity. Now, that has to do with sex. That has to do with the law of God, which was added in. What is the law of God referring to marriage, Mormon women? We'll even remind the Mormon women who are somewhat new. They only had 27 videos, I realized yesterday. But they focus on women's issues in the church. They're the ones who got caught up being fooled by Brigham Young in that they believe that Joseph Smith is this evil pedophile womanizer instead of Brigham Young, who set Joseph Smith up. And so women in the church are very upset about polygamy, and many have left the church because of the polygamy issue. These two women have left the church because they believe Joseph Smith is a polygamist because the church said so. Come on, women, get a clue. It's the current church who lied to you. I'm a poet, and I sure know it. And so, yes, the rewording of the law of chastity now paves the way for polygamy. He insults you by taking away your glory, taking away the veil. Now he's insulting you by setting it up for polygamy. It's no longer legally and lawfully. It is now according to the law of God. And so, women, you are being set up. And I wish you would see it, but you guys aren't wanting to listen to me on this channel. The next one that has come up, protecting LDS children. The actual organization called Protect LDS Children rose up because of the leaked audio of the recording of a father talking to a bishop about inappropriate questions being given to his daughter of a sexual nature. And so the church has had to comply and order that all bishops give a standardized question from the list rather than a random, hey, so little girl who's not yet in puberty, do you touch yourself down there and rub? You know, no more questions like that. But that has issued lots of other problems that have derived from that kind of process, which is on the list, but it's further down the list, so I'm not going to break the list for this. But then bishop storehouses. We have a coronavirus. The church created the storehouses for the Great Depression to help people out. And ever since then, the church has said, nah, screw people. We're not going to utilize this storehouse process anymore. We're more concerned with making money rather than storing food and emergency supplies in case of a rainy day again. That, you know, the title of the Mormon church is the Latter-day Saints, knowing that the latter days are going to be catastrophic and that people are going to need assistance with food. And here we have a coronavirus with high unemployment beyond the Great Depression, and the church closed the storehouses. There are a few people that are getting supplies outside of the storehouses being closed. Some are having their storehouses being depleted of supplies. But on the whole, the church isn't making new stuff. They closed Welfare Square. They closed their other business operations, so no new supplies are coming in. The whole purpose of the storehouses was to follow the example of Joseph of Egypt. And the church isn't even prepared. They tell Mormons to be prepared with a year's supply, but the church themselves have not set the example. They aren't even prepared for a state disaster, nor even a city disaster. They just don't have the supplies. They refused to have the supplies. They were more concerned with making the $100 billion in tithing scandal that I went over with you. And then, my lawsuit. Nelson, at the most recent general conference here in April, presented Jesus Christ, the Christus, being built on top of the foundation cornerstone of the church. That's the symbol. Nelson came out with it. He defined it, not me. He went over specifically. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is the logo, and we're going to put it in a box, and that's going to represent the cornerstone. Then we're going to place the Christus on top of the cornerstone and have an arch to represent his tomb that he was resurrected from. Remember that? Jesus is built on top of the church as a cornerstone. Now, remember the Seagull Gate that I've been going over with you lately. What is the foundation stone for that sculpture by Brigham Young's grandson, Mahan Rai Mori Ankamer Young? The inverted pentagram at Temple Square. There are symbolisms at play here. Nelson presented an idol for Mormons to worship. Next, during this coronavirus, Nelson was slow to close the church. As a medical doctor, he was slow to close the church. As a result of being slow to close the church, he had Mormons and missionaries infected with coronavirus, and they've died because he was slow to close the church as a medical doctor. And now he's reopened. Fortunately, my stake president has not opened his stake for church, but he has opened it, said, hey, we're open. We want you to follow the area authorities on this matter, consult with them. But if your area is in the yellow, by all means, go back and infect each other with coronavirus so that you can all die. That's what Herbert's doing. That's what Nelson's doing. They want you dead. They love you so much they want you dead. Do you remember handbook number 1 got released? Seems like yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. No, I forgot the words to the song. But handbook number 1 was released. Interesting timing of its release with the other scandal of the church. But church handbook number 1. That's like the holy grail of Mormonism documents, other than their financial records. They released it publicly. So now me, as a regular Mormon, can now have access to the abusive, bigoted, hateful, sexist, xenophobic, Luciferian doctrines that the leaders of the church have known this whole time, but have been keeping from Mormons. And I started to do a video series on that. I have the playlist still. I began by going over the sexual topics, thinking that would get people's attention, but Mormons don't care. It's the true church, Travis, leave us alone. Oh, you're Mormon and you left? And you've actually influenced us and we didn't know you influenced us? Oh, well, yeah, so what? It's the true church. So yeah, it came out during the same week that the Boy Scouts declared bankruptcy. Why did they declare bankruptcy? Because the church, remember, withdrew from the Boy Scouts to do their own thing now with the children, young women and young men of the church. So the Boy Scouts not having the funding and being abandoned with all the lawsuits of boys who are suing the Boy Scouts for rape. 3,000 Boy Scouts raped, provided by the church, and raped by Mormons through the Boy Scout program. And the church abandoned the Boy Scouts and, in essence, left the Boy Scouts to deal with it. And because the church abandoned them, there was no funding. The Boy Scouts declared bankruptcy. No Boy Scout who has been raped, and there's 3,000 of them, gets compensation for damages. All that right before the coronavirus became the issue of the day. Then there's the woman who cried rape against her MTC president and had been suing him in court. There was the videotape released about her going to his ward in Arizona, I think it was, getting up at testimony meeting in that building, which, now you should know better. You don't go to someone else's ward house and bear your testimony. You're supposed to do your own testimonies within your own ward. So if you're visiting another ward, you have to bite your tongue and sit down. And she apparently did not know that policy and Mormon cultural order and directive from the first presidency. And she went to his ward, got up at testimony meeting, and bore her testimony about how he raped her and is trying to get away with it. And she had to be issued down. Oh, that's another one I need to remember. That may have been in Monson's time, but I'm going to put it here. Silence. Testimony. Okay. I can't remember how long ago that incident was, but yeah, I haven't heard much from the case. Most likely the church decided to finally settle with her and shut her up, because when you settle, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and so shut the hell up, leave us alone. Here's your money. Go away, troublesome girl, troublesome woman. So that's how they do things, guys. They love women so much that they rape them and pay them off to be silent. And there's more on the rape issue, but first I put down the Moroni trumpet falls during the Magna earthquake. Magna meaning strong, Gabriel means strong God, God of strength, and so quite humorous. But many are recognizing the symbolism of it, as Moroni is no longer blowing the trumpet to the world. The church has lost the authority to warn the world as the Magna earthquake strikes. Gabriel, the true God, is sounding in place of Moroni, the false god. And so, other rape case, BYU. BYU has had a systemic problem of silencing women who've been raped, because women are afraid that by reporting that they've been raped, they're going to get banned from BYU, punished in the church with excommunication or some other kind of punishment, probation or disfellowshipment, by reporting it. And so women have been oppressed in the church at BYU because of the rapes that have gone on there. The guy gets away with it because the woman is afraid that she's going to get punished for reporting it. And they finally stood up against BYU officials, had in protests and signed petitions, and BYU has been forced to change their policy not to demand punishment for the victim of rape. If you're unfamiliar with BYU, they have an honor code, and in that honor code there are certain policies that Mormons are expected to adhere to while attending their university. And so when women report being raped, the council of whom they report it to ends up turning on the women, saying, "Oh, you had a man in your apartment after curfew? Well, you're to blame then for being raped. Oh, you weren't wearing the approved dress outfit that is required to be at BYU? Well, then you were tempting the man, therefore you're to blame. You weren't wearing your burqa and hijab. You're to blame." You see, that's just teach us sex ed. That's all you had to do. And it's going to be uncomfortable because our culture has made it uncomfortable. We call it taboo so that the porn industry can make billions of dollars, now millions of dollars, since it's online for free. They've taken a huge hit in money. But that's what happens when you legalize something. But, dear God. I talked about the black LDS, or no, I haven't talked to this one. The black missionary in Utah County was beaten the hell up by Mormon boys for being black. The news just reported the other week about how the ringleader of the 50 boys got rearrested. Those other 50 boys, they got away with it. There may be a couple others who got arrested as friends of this one particular boy, but the rest of the gang, they all got away with it. I belong to the Church of Racist Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We know who we are, we beat the hell out of blacks, we have no respect for human life. We rape all the women at BYU. I'm too good at this. I had lots of practice since primary. Alright, the next one. Lori Vallow and Daybell. I went over this last night also. Mormons who decided to go off the deep end, beyond the deep end of the church itself. And they murdered their spouses, and as of last night, they've also murdered their children. All because they believe that she's the goddess who's preparing the way for Jesus' coming, because Daybell had a near-death experience. So yeah, sad case in that one. Alright, another lawsuit that has hit the UK has not been too well announced here in Utah, is that 6 individuals, at least, have sued Nelson's children for incidents in the 1980s in their children's bountiful home. Yay, bountiful. The promised land of Utah, where they were performing satanic rituals and pedophilia of neighborhood children in their bountiful home. Dear God. That has, as I last heard, has gone before the Utah Supreme Court. I think it's going to be sitting there for a long time, or maybe a settlement was arranged. I don't know. The Supreme Court was to decide whether Nelson was to testify as a fact witness in the case, as the father. How much did you know, and when did you know it? And are you also involved? So yeah, that's been a problem. The other one, signs in the heavens of the latter days. Mormons know that there's going to be signs in the heavens in the latter days, and we've had them. I've gone over them, but the church does not like them. If you're gonna be imposters for the true church of latter days, you need to have a backstory for the signs in the heavens when they occur. Just a tip. If you want to pull it off, to tell your people who are looking for the signs that it's all fake news and it's the real signs are still to come after they've already happened. That kind of doesn't work. So yeah, we've got lots of signs. Magna earthquake being the sign on Earth, and the total solar eclipses that are occurring, and other eclipse, or the lunar eclipses of the tetrad. You know, the church just isn't prepared to handle these. It's like they didn't even know they were going to happen. I didn't know they were going to happen. I just thought it was kind of cool that a lunar eclipse seemed to associate with the death of an apostle. And then the tetrad occurred, and I went, oh wow, that was quite a fancy thing. But yeah, with the announcement of the total solar eclipse, I knew this was it. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. My mouth literally dropped when they announced it on Fox 13 News Utah on the 4th of November, 2016. And so yeah, I finished up the alphabet letter research, got that published, and stopped further publication into the research of the vocabulary. So I've not finished that project yet, and put a stop to the decipherment publications on Egyptian petroglyphs. And so, yeah, lots of things got put on hold as I had to do a cram course study and research and identification and all things solar related. So I was educated on it, but I never took it seriously. I didn't think it was actually going to happen, and it didn't happen as expansive as it happened. I mean, the whole scriptures came from prophesying of our days, signs in the heavens. Dear God. Wow. And so, yeah, the church is not prepared for any of that. Also, for this year, as each year the church gives out their membership reporting, but no longer announce it, no longer make it public. Word was already coming out, leaking out, that the church had lost for the first time ever. There was still a gain, but the percentage loss. And it's bad. They finally did come out with the reporting. I did the video on it, covering it, but yeah, the church is crashing and burning. This year, Nelson has designated it as the bicentennial year of Joseph Smith. He planned a whole thing for the whole year, which has been ruined because of coronavirus, but because of him even attempting it, has reemerged all the historical arguments with the church about church history and the true accounting of Joseph Smith. I got to be a part of that as I started to insert real church history publications from my research that I've been doing. And so I get to be a part of this part of the scandal in exposing the real church history that sheds light on the succession crisis. And I discovered the leadership crisis. That's my terminology for what happened in 1838. I can't understand why church historians didn't recognize it, but that's how I'm terming it, is that period in 1838 was the leadership crisis for the church. Succession crisis was in 1844 after Joseph was murdered, but a huge problem in the church. Church got infiltrated by the corrupt organization that they saved America from in 1826. That organization found out that the Smiths were a part of that, infiltrated the church, rose up in popularity and prominence. Then in 1838 made their move to take over the leadership positions in the various priesthood organizations, and then had Joseph Smith murdered as they had their leader take over and transport everybody out of the country of the United States into Mexico. That's what it was called back then in 1847. It was Mexico territory. It was not the United States. It was not the territory of Utah yet. And there they killed off the Indians to procure the land of Salt Lake City, and then have expanded since. Lots of problems. But then we get to the Edmunds-Tucker Act and other stuff that I've been researching. That, hasn't been an issue at all. It's just with my lawsuit. And then the one that I had written down, the little girl who was silenced during a testimony meeting where she decides to come out of the closet. A little girl, just barely in puberty, and she thinks she's been born gay. Again, teach us sex ed, so we don't have these problems. And so she got silenced, and it went viral. Alrighty. So 45 minutes for scandals. Dear God. So yeah, Judge First did not give an order yesterday either. Pay attention. She has no choice. Now 3 strikes against the church. That's a known metaphor. 3 strikes, you're out. Bye-bye, church. And then all this listing, that's way more than 3 strikes, isn't it? 45 minutes of strikes.